Marcus leaned back in his leather seat, watching the cityscape roll by as his driver took him to the airport. His mind was already somewhere else, picturing the cozy hideaway where he would soon be with Bella, his mistress. He glanced at his wife, Julia, who sat beside him, scrolling through messages on her phone. "You'll be back by Monday, right?" Julia asked, her tone casual but her eyes scanning his face for reassurance. "Of course," Marcus replied, forcing a smile. He reached over, patting her hand. "It's just another business trip." Julia gave a soft nod, but her gaze lingered on him, as if searching for something beneath his polished exterior. She didn't find it. At the airport, they shared a brief embrace before Julia watched him disappear into the crowd. She took a deep breath, pushing back a nagging feeling in her stomach, and then headed back home, not knowing that Marcus had no intention of boarding that flight. As soon as Julia's car was out of sight, Marcus exited the airport and hailed a cab. "Take me to 116 Oak Ridge," he instructed, giving the address of the secret apartment he shared with Bella. The cab driver nodded, and Marcus settled into the seat, already feeling the weight of his responsibilities lift. He found Bella waiting for him, her face lighting up as she opened the door. She threw her arms around him, pulling him inside. Their laughter filled the room, a stark contrast to the silence that Julia now faced at home. They talked about everything but his business trip, an unspoken agreement to leave his other life out of their moments together. "I was thinking we could go somewhere tropical," Bella suggested, tracing a finger along his arm. "Just the two of us, no distractions." "Soon," he replied, his voice smooth with practiced charm. "Very soon." Later that afternoon, Julia was cooking dinner when the news flashed on the television. The words "plane crash" blared on the screen, and she looked up in alarm. Her heart stopped as the anchor mentioned the flight number. Marcus's flight. "No," she whispered, reaching for her phone with shaking hands. She dialed his number, only to be met with silence. His phone was off. She tried again and again, her mind reeling with panic. The report confirmed that there were no survivors. Julia collapsed into a chair, sobs racking her body. She hadn't even gotten to say a proper goodbye. All the little things they'd fought about, the mornings she'd wished he would just stay home. Now they haunted her. Meanwhile, Marcus lay on the bed next to Bella, blissfully unaware of the storm raging at home. It wasn't until Bella's phone buzzed with a news alert that he learned about the crash. He sat up, staring at the screen, his mind racing. Relief washed over him, and then something darker, a sense of twisted gratitude. "If I'd been on that plane," he murmured, feeling a strange exhilaration. He looked over at Bella, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I guess fate had other plans for me." She looked at him, a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You could have been on that plane, Marcus. You almost were." He shrugged, brushing it off as if he hadn't just narrowly escaped death. All he could think about was how lucky he was to have dodged the tragedy. He didn't think once about Julia or the devastation he'd left behind. The days dragged by, each one blending into the next as Julia grappled with her grief. Friends and family visited, offering their condolences, but their words barely registered. She spent hours alone, replaying every memory of Marcus. Every call went unanswered, every message sent into the void. "I just wish he'd stayed home," she whispered into the empty room one night. "Why did he have to go?" She clung to the hope that somehow, against all odds, he might still be alive. But every day that passed chipped away at that hope, leaving her with nothing but a hollow ache. Finally, Marcus returned. He slipped in through the back door, avoiding the eyes of neighbors, feeling the weight of the situation settle over him. When Julia saw him standing in the doorway, she froze. Her face was a mask of confusion, relief, and something else, a shadow of doubt. "You're alive," she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. Marcus stepped forward, reaching for her, but she held up a hand. "Where were you? I thought you were on that plane." He hesitated, the lies stacking up in his mind. I missed the flight. Last-minute changes. I tried to call, but my phone died. She looked at him, her eyes narrowing. And where did you go? He hesitated, knowing he was balancing on a tightrope. He could feel the weight of the deception, yet he was unwilling to come clean. He was alive, and that should be all that mattered, at least to him. Julia's gaze lingered on him, the silence stretching between them. She had so many questions, but the words caught in her throat. She wondered if she should be thankful for his survival or furious at his betrayal. And she wondered what else he wasn't telling her. For Marcus, the lies felt like chains, but he was unwilling to break free of them. He glanced at Julia, knowing that one wrong word could shatter everything. And yet, part of him was tired, wanting to unburden himself. But could he risk it? Bella, somewhere in the city, waited for him to come back, unaware of the reckoning he now faced. She expected him to return, to reassure her that their secret would stay safe. She, too, was caught in a web of choices, whether to continue down this path with him or seek something more honest. And so, the story leaves you with this. If you were in Julia's shoes, would you embrace him with relief or confront him with the betrayal? If you were Marcus, would you confess the truth or hide behind the lies? And if you were Bella, would you stay in the shadows or would you step into the light? What would you do?